A rainy night, a lonely diner. A single father sits with two spoons, one for himself, one for the wife he lost. Then the door opens. A stranger whispers, "My son's hungry." One small act of kindness is about to change to broken lives. Forever. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell us where you're watching from. Now let's get started. Sedina sat off a quiet highway in Ohio, glowing softly against the stormy night. Rain slid down the windows in slow lines, blurring the outside world. Inside, the smell of coffee and fried food mixed with the low hum of an old radio. Ethan sat alone in a corner booth, his jacket still damp from the rain. In front of him were two spoons, neatly placed beside a single plate. One spoon was for him. The other had no practical purpose, yet it had been there every night for 3 years. It belonged to the memory of his wife, Sarah, who used to sit across from him and laugh at the smallest things. Removing it felt like losing her all over again. Ethan stirred his coffee, but didn't drink it. His thoughts drifted back to hospital rooms, quiet prayers, and promises he couldn't keep. Sarah had loved this diner. She said it made her feel like life was still simple. After she passed, Ethan kept coming here, sitting in the same booth, pretending she was just running late. The waitress never asked questions. She always brought one plate, 2 spoons, and left him alone. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Ethan glanced at the empty chair across from him, his chest tightening as it always did. Loneliness had become his routine, something he carried as naturally as breathing. The bell above the diner door suddenly rang, breaking the silence. Cold air rushed in with the rain. A young woman stepped inside, soaked through, her hair clinging to her face. She held a small boy close to her chest, his shoes worn thin, his stomach pressed against her as if trying to disappear. They stood near the entrance, unsure. Other customers avoided eye contact. The woman's voice shook as she finally spoke, barely louder than the rain. "I'm sorry. My son's hungry. We won't bother anyone. Can we just sit for a little while?" Her words carried more fear than hope. Ethan watched them quietly. The boy's eyes locked onto the plates of food around the diner. Ethan followed his gaze, then looked back at the empty chair across from him. For a moment, grief whispered that the seat was already taken by a ghost. His hand tightened around the spoon. Then something else spoke louder, the memory of Sarah's kindness, the way she never let anyone feel invisible. Ethan stood up slowly. The scrape of the chair against the floor echoed louder than expected. He pulled it back and looked at the woman. "Sit," he said softly. In that moment, without knowing it, Ethan took the first step toward healing not just theirs, but his own too. The boy sat carefully in the chair, as if afraid it might be taken away. Ethan signaled the waitress before the young mother could say another word. He ordered a warm meal, fries, and milk without asking permission. The boy's hands trembled as he picked up the fork, eating slowly at first, then faster, as hunger gave way to relief. The mother watched him, her eyes glossy with unshed tears. She kept apologizing, her voice low, explaining she never meant to ask a stranger for help. Ethan listened quietly, nodding, understanding more than he spoke. He remembered what it felt like to need help but not know how to ask for it. As the rain sopped outside, the woman finally shared her story. Her name was Emily. She had left Kentucky 2 days earlier, escaping an abusive relationship with nothing but a backpack and her son, Noah. The bus dropped them off miles from anywhere when her last dollars ran out. She hadn't eaten all day, so her son could. Ethan felt a deep ache in his chest, not pity, but recognition. Loss had shaped them both in different ways. He didn't offer advice or judgment, only quiet presence. Sometimes, he knew, listening was the kindest thing a person could do. When the plates were empty, Emily reached for her purse, but Ethan gently stopped her. He paid the bill and asked the waitress for a pen. On a small napkin, he wrote down an address and phone number. He explained that his sister ran a nearby women's shelter and would make sure they were safe. Emily's hands shook as she held the napkin, like it was something fragile and sacred. She thanked him over and over, her voice breaking. Ethan simply smiled and said, "You're doing the right thing. That's enough." The words surprised even him. Weeks passed. Ethan returned to the diner, night after night, still setting out 2 spoons. But something inside him had shifted. One evening, a letter waited on the table. Emily had found work at a grocery store. Nor was back in school and sleeping in a warm bed. They were safe. Ethan folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the second spoon. For the first time since Sarah's death, the chair across from him didn't feel empty. He had felt hopeful. Ethan realized then that kindness hadn't just fed a hungry child, it had reminded him that his heart was still alive.